Hello, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be making a 1950s holiday dress. A few months ago I found this really beautiful green satiny material at the thrift store for I think it was only like $6. At first I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it because I don't really do a lot of green in my wardrobe, but then it came to me in a beautiful vision of green satin and pearls. Here are a few of my inspiration pictures. A bunch of them are actually from the 50s and a couple are some modern dresses. I want this dress to have a classically 1950s flared silhouette and some off-the-shoulder sleeves. I want to involve pearls in the decoration, so I want to put some pearls on the sleeve, also something in the back. I'm not exactly sure how much of this material there is, but there definitely is a decent chunk. I want this dress to close with a small zipper going down the side seam. I basically never use any kind of actual patterns for anything that I make. Sometimes I make my own patterns, but in this instance I'm going to drape it onto my mannequin. I'm going to start by draping the bodice of the dress using this plain white lining material. Then I'll use that as a pattern to draw out the bodice on the green material, and then also add the skirt. I want to try and make the skirt and bodice be actually connected as one piece. So basically like a seam from the bodice will go straight into the seam for the skirt instead of making a skirt and making a bodice and then sewing them together. I think this dress will be perfect to wear on Christmas or Christmas Eve or just any day that I want to feel really classy, because who says that I can't just wear a fancy dress whenever I feel like it? So let's get draping a dress.
Miss brother, Miss sister and Miss mother back. For God's sake, don't send me. We have a nasty officer. He is a horrid brute. Last Friday he was terse with me, 'cause I did not salute. But I cut him twice today.
Now I have this pattern for the bodice of the dress from draping the lining material, and I've pinned this to the material that I want the outside of the dress to be. I'm going to trace the shape of the bodice and then draw a skirt attached to this part where you would normally sew the skirt to the bodice. This way, in the center of the bodice, the skirt will actually just blend right into it without having a seam right here. But because I only have a limited amount of fabric, since this is thrifted fabric and I can't get more of it, I am not going to do that for this side part of the bodice. This part will actually have a seam where it attaches to the skirt, same with over here, but the center part will be seamless. Only the bodice of the dress is going to actually be lined. I'm going to leave the skirt unlined because I can just wear a petticoat with it. For the lining of the bodice, I'm going to use a flat lining method, which is basically where you pin the lining and the main fabric together and then treat them like one layer. Now I'm going to start drawing out the skirt for the dress. I did something weird. So when I was draping the pattern for this, I sort of made it to have a side closure, which was the original plan, but also a center back closure, because I'm just so used to doing that. I basically do that on every garment, so I kind of did both accidentally, and I just like didn't even think about it. So, we're just gonna switch to a center back closure, because I think it'll just work better at this point. I have mostly sewn all the pieces together. There's some things still remaining to do. Right here, where the center of the bodice connects to the skirt, it's done this little like weird puckery thing. That was entirely my fault because I cut the pattern out a little bit funky. I mean, either way it would be my fault because I'm the person who made this. So to sort of fix that, I think I have two options. Either I can just forget about this seamless thing going down the middle and sort of sew a little bit right there to make it look like there's a seam, or I can try and use some pearls to cover that. And I think that that's the route I'm going to go with, because that'll sort of tie the pearl decorations that I'm going to put on the sleeves down the dress a little bit more, and I think that'll look pretty nice anyways. So that's the plan. A few hiccups, but necessity is the mother of invention. Making mistakes leads to cool ideas. So this is how it's going. I'm gonna keep on sewing the main pieces together and then we'll move on from there.
The next day.
Alright, I've sewn basically all of the main seams for the dress. I'll show you sort of what's going on the inside. So as you can see, the bodice does have a lining, but there's still totally raw edges. There's nothing that's like nicely finished. However, that is not the case for the skirt, because for the skirt seams, I decided to use a French seam. This is basically where the raw edge is like tucked inside of the seam. Here is a diagram. If you're not exactly sure how to do a French seam, they're incredibly easy and very useful for really long seams. I'm not 100% sure how historically accurate this is for the 1950s, but you know what? I don't follow the modern sewing rules. I just like do what feels useful and what feels right. So I feel like if I lived in the 50s, I probably still would be not really following the sewing rules. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start working on the boning, which is going to go on the inside. I have these super duper long zip ties, and I used these for boning in my graduation dress, and it actually works so fabulously. It's great because it gives the dress a lot of structure and keeps it from doing like a bunch of weird creasing and stuff, but it is still super duper flexible, so it's not uncomfortable at all. Then I have this sort of like ribbony stuff from the thrift store. I'm not exactly sure what it's intended for, but I'm going to use this to make the boning channels. So to sort of install the boning, what you're going to want to do is iron all of the seams flat from the inside so that they lay nice and smooth. You'll want to press them opened like that, not just to one side. Then once it's been ironed flat, you can put your ribbon or whatever it is you want to use over top of that and whip stitch the edges of it down all the way along the seam, but you'll want to leave the top opened. Then once you have a channel right here for the boning to go in, you'll take your little piece, slide it into the channel, and sew the channel closed. So I'm going to do that for the two front seams, but I am actually going to go beyond the seam and just continue going up. The boning is why we have this flat lining situation, because when you're sewing the channel down, you'll only pick up the lining layer. That way you won't be able to see the stitches from the other side. For now, I'm just going to do the two center front seams. So I'm going to go sew in the boning and then I'll come back to you.
Plenty girls had traveled out one night, and arm in arm they told you may depend, till a dozen pals all sang out with delight, hello, hello, there who's your lady friend. Said Patrick, I don't know her.
Here are the two boning channels I have in the front. I sewed the bottom of them closed, and now we're going to insert the boning from the top. Before you stick the first end of the boning in, you're going to want to use some scissors to just round the edge off a little, because if it's too sharp, it can start to wear through and poke through the fabric. And now I'm going to cut the length, but I don't want it to just be in there like that. I want to sort of push it in a little bit to make sure that it has like a bit of tension happening here. Now I'll cut it, and then I pull it out again and round this top edge. Now I'll put the boning back in and very, very securely sew the end closed. And there you have one piece of boning. Now I'm going to put the boning into the other side, and then I'm going to clean up these other seams that we didn't put boning into. To finish these seams, I'm going to do hand felling, which is basically where you fold the raw edge of a seam allowance underneath itself and then whip stitch it into place.
The following day.
It is now the next day, and I've done all of the felling on those main seams of the bodice. Now I'm just going to do the same thing for the waist seam. Then once I've done that, I'm going to start cleaning up the edge of the dress. To finish off this edge, I'm going to fold over the main fabric, fold it over again, and then whip stitch it into place, only picking up the lining. That way the stitches, once again, won't show on the outside. I'm going to do this along the whole top edge of the dress, and also on the side edge where the whole closure is going to be, and I'm going to go all the way down the skirt.
Upon the continent, was fighting in the Irish Fusiliers.
It is yet another day, or I suppose evening, because it's begun to get dark out. You gotta love winter. Yesterday I did all of the finishing all around the dress, and while I was doing that, I also went and did the hem, so basically all of the raw edges are finished. What I'm gonna do now is start closing up the back, because this is an entirely opened dress. Basically what I'm gonna do is take both of the sides and overlap them in the back just a tiny bit. Then I'll pin this slight overlap going all the way down the skirt. Starting a few inches down from the waist, I'll use an invisible stitch to close it. For some projects I use a whip stitch for this, but because this is a sort of satiny material, stitches are really easily visible, so I'm going to use an invisible stitch instead. Then I'll sew some hook and eyes into the back and we'll be totally done with the whole base for the dress, and we can start working on the more fun parts like the off-the-shoulder sleeves and the decorations and all that jazz.
It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but we're not downhearted yet. With the Frenchy girl paddled out one night, and arm in arm they strolled to May defend.
I've finished the main structure of the dress, and now it closes up all nice and clean in the back. Now I'm going to start working on the off-the-shoulder situation, and I want this to basically be a wide band of fabric that goes all the way around. For this pattern piece, I'm basically just going to decide how wide I want the band to be, probably like 5 inches-ish, and then double that and add some seam allowance, so probably somewhere around 11 inches. Then for the other dimension, I'm just going to measure around my shoulders to sort of find what feels easy enough to move my arms in, but that's not just going to slide down super easily. Then I'll take that measurement and add some seam allowance and just cut out a rectangle that follows those dimensions.
While we have decked upon the sea and come beyond the land, we need not fret.
Alright, now I have this long strip and it's double the width that I want the actual band to be. So I'm going to fold this in half lengthwise so that the shiny side is on the inside. Then I'll sew along that top edge and flip it right side out. Then I'll end up with a nice clean strip to go around there.
Perhaps you wonder what I am. I will explain to you. My conscience is the only thing that helps to pull me through.
Here is the strip that I've made. I centered the seam in the middle of the back so that it can be against my skin so you won't be able to see it. I want the ends of this strip to be gathered and then attached to the center back of the dress. So first I'm going to gather one end and then tie it off. Then with a new piece of thread, actually attach it to the dress.
In my line, that the sergeant always hates me, and he calls me baby mine. But oh, I got so cross with him, I rose to the attack.
Alright, I finished attaching this band, and I'm just going to keep it attached at the center back, because I kind of like to be able to adjust where it is. Then I did a few things off camera. I attached this little bow to the center back also. It has a little snap on it so that it can close to the other side. Another thing is, I totally forgot that I didn't put any boning into this edge part at the center back, but I was able to sort of just shimmy some in between a couple of the stitches, and that actually seems to work perfectly well. That boning is not going to get a bunch of like stress put on it. I highly doubt it's going to like poke through or come out or anything. So that gives it a little bit more structure in the back and keeps it from crumpling. I also tried the dress on to see how it fits, and I marked where the sides of the sleeves are because I also want to gather the band there. At the points where I gather the sleeves, I'd like to sew in some glass pearls. I also want to attach some pearls to sort of right here where the bow is in the back. Then I'm also finally going to do that thing that I mentioned earlier where I'm going to put some little pearls at the point in these front seams where they did this kind of like little crumply thing. It actually looks kind of cool. It does like this cool little drapey thing at the waist. It like goes down a little bit like that, and I think it looks really cool. But I am still going to put a couple pearls there because I think it'll sort of help bring that pearl motif down the dress a little bit more. So I'm just going to gather the sides of the sleeves and then decorate with some pearls, and then the dress will be done. I'm super excited about it. Real quick, I want to mention the fact that this shirt is made of a very similar material to this dress. That is totally coincidental.
Out the rank and file, send out the brave old territorio. They'll face the danger with a smile. Send out the boys of the old brigade who made old England free. Send out the bakers and the...
And that is the finished result of my holiday dress. I am very happy with the result. I really like the silhouette and the decorations. The color of this fabric is beautiful. I'm still debating as to what color this is because in sunlight it looks much bluer. Whatever the case, it's very beautiful and I think it definitely has a sort of Christmassy look happening. I have a couple complaints with this dress, mostly just the fit. My mannequin, this is Nancy, my mannequin, and she has a much larger chest than I do. I'm a very flat-chested human, so I already sort of tried to make it a little bit too small for the mannequin, which it is, and it's still a little bit too big for me up top. It's not horrendous, it's not like a super drastic, like it looks like it doesn't fit me, but it definitely likes to sort of fall down. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness, the pearls just fell out of the right sleeve. The thread broke, so I will go and fix that later. I am using vintage thread, that's probably why the pearls fell off, because this is not the strongest thread in the world. I'll have to reinforce it a few times just to be sure that doesn't happen, but other than that, I'm very happy with this dress. I think it's very beautiful. That would be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Dang pearls, how dare you fall off? Or dang thread, how dare you snap, I suppose. I'm going to attach some little pearls right at this weird front spot. I'm totally middle fingering you. Dang.